Okay, so I'm going to assume that where I saw everything drop out was about where where we got up to. So just quickly, I was rabbiting on about achieving balance and the difficulty in doing that within a current organizational setup that is so entirely focused on the set mindset. So that's really, really hard. We're only just starting to play around at the edges of that. I'm not aware of anybody that's done it really well. So I don't have anything concrete to show you, but what I am going to show you, try to show you, is some possible futures about how this sort of mythical, theoretical bad mindset might play out in terms of changes to institutional e-learning. And I'm going to use examples from USQ, but most of them I think will be fairly transportable. So this here, you don't need to read it, is the first of 11 pages from a PDF document that is sent around to academics in my faculty. It seeks to explain to academics the process that they should follow to set supplementary assignment work for a student at the end of the semester. They haven't quite passed, they haven't quite failed, we're going to give them another go, and we have an 11-page PDF, which is up to version 2.7, by the way, that explains to people the manual process that they have to go through on their Moodle course site to get this working. So the idea here is that the set mindset has produced something by, rather than the technology help things, that the academic has to read this 11-page PDF and go in. Now, one might argue that some of this is the digital fluency of the academics, but it's also the fact that the system requires people to create an 11-page PDF to explain this. Now, this is a fairly typical Moodle course site. It's what I see at USQ, and the supplementary assessment is basically based around the assignment activity in Moodle. The problem here is that Moodle doesn't know anything about USQ and its supplementary assessment process, and nothing can be done apparently to make Moodle aware of this. And this is the problem of integrating things into the LMS. Moodle has to be this thing that's reused across institutions. It's an enterprise system, and best practice with enterprise systems is you implement them vanilla. It would be a bad thing, it would be inefficient and complex for USQ to start modifying the guts of Moodle here, because the next time Moodle's upgraded, all sorts of clashes and problems and issues. We don't go down that route. But the bad mindset, using augmented browsing, what could be done, and one of the things we're working towards, is the idea of, rather than seeing this, is that somebody with the appropriately configured browser would see something like this. So there's a button there that says supplementary, and the idea is that I know I've got to set a supplementary assessment, so I click the button, and the button knows enough about my context that it actually sets the supplementary assessment up for me, or at least walks me through the process. It scaffolds me through the process. I don't have to read and negotiate an 11-page PDF. That we're leveraging the affordances of the technology to help us achieve some tasks. Now, the way I'm envisioning this is we're making use of a distributed system. Moodle is a tree-like system. Moodle modular is built into the Moodle acronym. It's built like a tree, and trees aren't very flexible. A distributed perspective is adding this that's outside Moodle, but it appears like it's inside Moodle. Another example, the 1-minute paper is a technique for gaining feedback from students about their progress. It's one that's used often during term. It basically asks the student to answer 2 simple questions. The questions might be, what was the most important thing you learnt this week, and what are you still having problems with? So Steve in 2005 has done a review, and he's basically found that, well, not many people know about the minute paper, and those that do know about it, the perception is it's going to be too time-consuming to analyse responses. Now, wouldn't it be great if we had this technology or this approach where we could analyse responses from students and make it easier for people to see and identify trends? Part of this problem comes back to, again, the lack of context. Moodle has an activity called feedback, which is brilliantly designed to help support the idea of minute papers, but the feedback activity module itself doesn't know anything about minute papers. It's too contextual. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't have the pedagogical value. Well, why not modify it so that when you use the feedback module, there's actually an extra bullet point there that says minute papers, and you can find out about it, and you can actually create a feedback activity already set up, ready to go with the feedback set up to work as a minute paper. Two more examples. This is my ice-breaking activity in my course. For 300 students, they are asked to come in here, write 3 posts. They want to post an introduction to themselves, then they should go and find 2 other people in that forum, somebody that is similar to them, and they should reply to their post and say hi, and then somebody they think is different to them, reply to them and say hi. Now, at the moment, Moodle doesn't know anything, the discussion forum in Moodle doesn't know anything about this particular learning design. It doesn't have any of the context. So it doesn't provide any functionality at all to help me manage this process, or yet help the student scaffold into this process. It wouldn't be that hard to add a little button here that says check progress that is specific to this particular activity. Again, augmented browsing so that my system knows that this particular Moodle discussion forum I'm using for this particular learning design, and adding this check progress would make sense in this particular context. It'd also make sense for me to add to my Know Thy Student little pop-up box something that would say that, well, actually, we've got 3 posts, introduction, similar, and different. This student has done their introduction, but they haven't done their similar and different, and even a remind button that if I click that, it does something and it reminds the student. This is what Lockyer and colleagues are talking about, an example of, very simple example, of learning process analytics. Being able to access the data and analysis about the learner and their progress within the actual task, part of the learning design, knowing about the learning design. At the moment, too many of our learning analytics stuff know nothing about the particular learning design or the context in which I work. Almost finished. Last example, folks. This is one I'm really interested in. This is my course site, the standard look and feel at USQ. Up in the top right hand corner, there is a question mark. That question mark takes me to a page that is designed for students. It doesn't provide any help to me as an academic. Now, what I'd like to do using augmented browsing is add something, have people download a Grease Monkey script or something similar, so that when they go to their course sites, it actually adds some links over the top. And so I've suggested 3 links: help, change, and talk. Now, help is where we can get some help and ask access to all the most recent things. I don't know about UniSA, but at USQ, I actually have to go to 3 different websites and figure out which of 3 different websites I need to get help with. It'd be great if I could click on here, the system knows I'm on the home page for my course site, and it can provide me with the help that's relevant to where I am. It'd be even nicer if it would know that this is a large 3rd-year course, lots of people in it, so I might need to know more about the sort of help for large courses, as opposed to if I was teaching one of my master's courses with 5 students, I wouldn't necessarily need to get the same level of help. And the idea is that these links would change depending on the type of page that I'm on. So here's, I'm on an assignment page, so now the change link is there. What the change link would do is allow me to be aware of all the other Grease Monkey scripts and other augmented browsing and other things that people have done that allow me to change the functionality of this particular page. So I might be able to use that link to find Peter Albion's Grease Monkey script, and I can choose to install that on my browser so that now that I'm using the assignment activity, I actually start to see the summary of the marker statistics for my course. I'm now able to customize the learning space to suit my needs. I don't have to get, and for my context, for what I need to do, I don't have to be stuck with the institutional defaults. What would be really great is if this system actually worked across institutions. Cole Beer, a colleague at CQU, he uses Moodle. It'd be great if he could use exactly the same links. So these links aren't specific to USQ or to CQU, they're specific to my network. Or they might not be. The idea is that I can take control about what I see at different places, not necessarily somebody central, moving away from that hierarchical tree-like approach. And also the idea that this may not actually need to work just on Moodle or institutional learning systems. Because augmented browsing sits in my browser, it might know about that, well, hang on, people know about using Twitter for learning and teaching, so when I'm on Twitter, I can also see these links about and might provide some advice about how to make use of Twitter for learning and teaching. So really strongly moving towards a much more distributed approach away from a tree-like approach. Look, we're well and truly over time. I'm going to come to an end. The last thing I will mention is I am currently working on the idea of CASA, context appropriate scaffolding assemblages, and I'm just going to skip over that very quickly and get to the end and questions, folks. And because I will need to be able to see you asking questions, I'm going to close PowerPoint down and try to come back into the space. And what I will do before I do that is I'll just take that URL and hopefully put that in the chat. So I wonder how many people are left. Anybody got any questions? And so I have put the URL for the slides, the website. The slides have all the references.
Is it okay if we share those slides with our attendees, David?
Absolutely. They're licensed with the Creative Commons. Take them, do with them what you will.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, here's a question from Nayana. How did you go about adding this special functionality in your system?
Okay, the system that I use at the moment, the Know Thy Student one that I showed, essentially what I've done is I've scraped a lot of screens or datas. I've written scripts that take information out of Moodle and I put them onto a database that I run on my laptop. I have then written a Grease Monkey script that is installed on my browser, and so when I visit my course sites, that Grease Monkey script kicks in, knows that I'm visiting my course page, it does some things, and that Grease Monkey script talks to a little server that's running on my laptop that talks to the database that produces all the information. The great thing that's happening at the moment in technology sphere is APIs. Moodle has a really quite detailed API, and if I was able to convince the powers to be at USQ to turn that API on and allow me to have access, I would actually be able to recreate everything that I do with that screen scraping and that database via the Moodle API. I wouldn't actually have to do anything dodgy, and we'd be able to scale that quite easily, and that's something we're exploring over the next 6 months or so. And this is the important point to make, is that technology has actually moved on. The technology itself, in terms of APIs, there isn't a modern web-based system being written today that doesn't come with APIs baked in. It's how people are writing these systems anyway. What we're talking about here is actually just making use of that information, that capability, that functionality.
Okay, thanks very much. There's a question from Helen. Can you read that, David?
Could we get a Grease Monkey of our own at UniSA? Yes, you could. Grease Monkey is something. This is the great thing I like about Grease Monkey is it's on my browser. It's something that I choose. It's not something. So I assume UniSA is like USQ, where you've got people in central learning and teaching that says we have an approved set of applications that you can use and you cannot use anything else. Well, the Breaking Bad mindset, which I use, says, well, bugger that. I'll install Grease Monkey. It's my thing. It's what I want to do in my learning space. You can install that. Peter Albion's Grease Monkey script is something that you could install and in theory would probably work on any Moodle install. That Grease Monkey script doesn't rely on anything else except that you have appropriate access to an assignment activity on Moodle. My Grease Monkey script, because it relies on the database and server I'm running on my laptop, it's something that really only works for me. But the way the place we're moving towards is modifying that to make use of the Moodle API. So in theory, if we wrote a system like that for the Moodle API that worked at USQ, it would be able to be used by somebody else at another institution that uses Moodle where they've turned on their Moodle API. Tracy, in terms of Grease Monkey and Firefox, there are solutions where Grease Monkey or Grease Monkey-like functionality can actually live on Chrome and also on Safari. So it's no longer a thing that's limited to just to Firefox. And the question about coding, learning to code. So is coding the new literacy? I didn't use it in the presentation here, but there's a thing from Ratatouille, the movie, the Pixar movie, where the idea here is that I'm not suggesting that everybody needs to be able to code. It certainly can be beneficial if you know how to code and you can do this stuff, but I don't think it's appropriate or it's something that everybody will have to do. Part of the bad mindset and part of the distribution is that you don't actually, everybody doesn't have to code. It just have to be that the people who can should be able to code, and when they do code, they should be able to share what they have done with everybody else, rather than creating this hierarchical bottleneck where the only people that can code and do things are the approved people in the IT division, or increasingly it's not even in the IT division that's doing the programming anymore, it's the external consultants or the people at Moodle HQ. So the Ratatouille connection is that the idea is that not everybody can be a great chef, but a great chef, anybody could be a great chef. And we want to be able to create a system that allows anybody to be able to do that, and for the system as a whole to benefit from that, rather than limit it down and have the bottleneck.
Okay, thank you very much, David. That was fascinating, and we apologise very much for the networking issues. We managed to get back in the end, but apologies for that.
No, that's all right. The technology stuff happens.
Yeah, well, if it was going to be with anybody, any presenter, you would be the one we choose, I guess. You're aware of the limitations. Okay, we'd like to thank you very much on behalf of UniSA, and I'm sure you might be fielding